Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the B segment of episode 14 of Codename Kids Next Door, Operation P.O.P. We begin this segment with number 2 arriving at Lime Ricky's bar in order to talk to who else but Lime Ricky. Lime Ricky is pleased to hear that number 2 has brought the soda supply that he's ordered, and number 2 also informs Lime Ricky that the bar staff is currently unloading the truck of the soda supply as they speak. As a show of thanks, Lime Ricky gives number 2 a copy of Yipper Card number 73 and a cup of root beer on the house. It's shortly after number 2 begins to drink the cup of root beer when suddenly a group of adults invade Lime Ricky's bar. The group is led by a man named Mr. Fizz, who is enforcing the Soda Control Act, an act it's an act that declares that anyone who is under the age of 13 is forbidden from drinking soda. And Mr. Fizz declares everyone in Lime Ricky's bar as being in violation of the Soda Control Act. The next scene takes us to the interrogation room of Mr. Fizz's headquarters, and Mr. Fizz has taken it up upon himself to personally interrogate number 2, demanding answers about where exactly number 2 is brewing the soda that he's supplying for all these soda bars. But number 2 refuses to give Mr. Fizz any answers, and he's also confident that his teammates will come to help him escape from Mr. Fizz's headquarters. Mr. Fizz, however, reveals that he's had some of his minions already capture number 2's teammates, and the rest of the Sector V operatives are brought into the interrogation room as well. Number 2, however, continues to refuse to give Mr. Fizz any answers, and number 2's teammates are cheering him on for defying Mr. Fizz. But the collective noises of the Sector V operatives cause Mr. Fizz to become really agitated and really irritated, and he storms out of the interrogation room while also locking the door to trap the Sector V operatives. Number 5, however, has a solution to escape. She questions number 2 if Lime Ricky has already paid for the soda supply that he ordered, and when number 2 confirms this by showing the envelope with the copy of Yipper Card number 73, number 5 takes the Yipper Card and she uses it to undo the lock of the door. She takes the card and she places it in between the crack of the door, and she does this in order to undo the lock of the door, and it works. They are able to open up the door and leave the interrogation room. Number 2, though, comments that number 5 bent the card. She bent the edge of the card when she used it to undo the lock of the door. Mr. Fizz is shown drinking some soda, claiming that he needs something to steady his nerves. But when he looks through the window of the interrogation room and sees that the Sector V operatives have escaped, he activates an alarm in order to inform his minions of this so that his minions can try and recapture the Sector V operatives. The Sector V operatives, however, are able to give Mr. Fizz's minions the slip by going through a door in the hallway that they're currently in. And the Sector V operatives find out that the door they entered has led them into a factory. And in this factory, they see kids are trapped on conveyor belts. And at one point during this, As the kids are being forced to go along the conveyor belt, they eventually end up being trapped in soda bottles. Mr. Fizz has entered the room at some point, and he comments about how magnificent his plan is, in his words. And Mr. Fizz explains that the reason he's trapping kids in bottles is because he thinks it's the most effective way in order to enforce the Soda Control Act, by trapping kids in these soda bottles until they are 13 years old. Number 5 is the first of the Sector V operatives to respond to Mr. Fizz's plan. She says Mr. Fizz is crazy and that no one is going to put the kids next door in soda bottles. So all of the Sector V operatives start to talk at once. They're all calling Mr. Fizz crazy for his plan and saying how horrible it is to put kids in bottles. And the noise of the factory itself also, the noise of the factory and the noise of the Sector V operatives for that are opposing Mr. Fizz, all of this collective noise is starting to make Mr. Fizz agitated and irritated, like we saw earlier in the interrogation room. And finally, he snaps and says that he needs soda. And then Mr. Fizz then dons a soda-powered battle armor. So this battle armor is comprised of soda bottles, barrels, and a plastic respirator over the mouth. And, well, like I said, it's soda-powered battle armor, which means that this battle armor weaponizes soda. So Mr. Fizz has donned this battle armor in order to fight the Sector V operatives. So we now get a fight sequence between the 5 Sector V operatives and Mr. Fizz in his soda-powered battle armor. And during the course of the fight, Mr. Fizz and most of the Sector V operatives end up on the conveyor belts. And by the end of the fight, Mr. Fizz is able to trap 4 of the 5 Sector V operatives into bottles. Number 2 is the only one who isn't trapped in a bottle just yet. And unfortunately, Number 2 accidentally contributes to his teammates being trapped in bottles. There is a point where some of his teammates are questioning Number 2 on whose side he's on, and Number 2 insists he's on their side. But eventually, yes, Number 1, Number 3, Number 4, and Number 5 are all trapped in soda bottles by the end of the fight. And Number 2 does manage to find the lever that turns the conveyor belt on and off. And Number 2, Number 2 switches the position of the lever for the conveyor belt in a state of anger when 4 of his teammates have been trapped in soda bottles, commenting how this hasn't been very easy for him. But when he does this, this causes Mr. Fizz, who's still on the conveyor belt, to stagger forward, and then Number 2 gets an idea. So Number 2 continuously switches the position of the lever on and off constantly. And then finally, when Number 2 does stop switching the position of the lever, Mr. Fizz, the soda in Mr. Fizz's powered battle armor starts to act up. Kind of like what happens when you shake a can or a bottle of soda too much and then you try to open the can or bottle after you shake it a lot. That's what happens with Mr. Fizz's powered battle armor, essentially. So after Mr. Fizz has been defeated, Number 2 takes the barrel glove, one of the barrel gloves of Mr. Fizz's powered battle armor, and he puts on the glove in order to pretty much force Mr. Fizz into doing what he, Number 2, wants him to do. And Number 2 has Mr. Fizz open the bottles of the kids that he's trapped in the soda bottles already, we see some of the kids are already free and they're drinking soda. Number 2 is also drinking soda as well while he's making sure Mr. Fizz opens up all the bottles. And the segment ends with number 2 making Mr. Fizz look for number 5 among the soda bottles the soda bottles that are trapping kids that have yet to be opened. And like I said, that's how we end the segment. So this segment introduces us to Mr. Fizz, and Mr. Fizz does get one more major appearance. Mr. Fizz does get one more major appearance in the series, but this major appearance doesn't happen until season 6, the final season of the series. Having said that, though, Mr. Fizz also gets some cameo appearances in between this appearance and his next major appearance. And in Mr. Fizz's other major appearance, number 2 is also in the spotlight, or he shares the spotlight in that upcoming segment. We'll cross that bridge when we eventually get to it. But yes, number 2 is also the spotlight character for this particular segment. And with that in mind, one could actually make the argument that Mr. Fizz is number 2's arch enemy, or at least he's one of number 2's arch enemies. There's another character I'm thinking of right now who could also be considered number 2's arch enemy, but we'll cross that bridge when we eventually get to it. But yes, in both of Mr. Fizz's major appearances, number 2 is at least one of the spotlight characters, if not the spotlight character. And in the other major appearance of Mr. Fizz does seem to single number 2 out in particular. So yeah, you could definitely argue that Mr. Fizz is one of number 2's arch enemies. Now, the other thing about this segment is, the Soda Control Act. The idea of how in the Kids Next Door universe, adults try to make it illegal for anyone who is under 13 years old to drink soda. And that's definitely meant to be an allegory for another type of drinking age, or what you usually expect in the real world when you hear the term drinking age. That's pretty much a kid-friendly allegory for that particular detail. And the Soda Control Act actually does reference a real-life Prohibition Act as well. So that was a pretty interesting detail as well. And, that's right, on one of his blog posts, Tom Warburton did comment that he and Mo Willems, the co-head writer for the first 4 seasons of the series, had came up with an idea for most, if not all, of the segments to feature an evil and a super evil. In the case of this segment, Operation P.O.P, the evil is Mr. Fizz trying to enforce the Soda Control Act to prevent kids from drinking soda, or to make soda only legal for teenagers and adults, while the super evil is trapping kids in soda bottles, because that's definitely a much greater evil in comparison to the Soda Control Act. So that definitely was a good example. Tom Warburton, I felt, provided Tom Warburton and Mo Willems and the rest of the staff, for that matter, I think did a good job at highlighting the evil and super evil concept in this particular segment. Otherwise, I guess another notable detail for this segment is how some of the background characters from season 1 do make a return in this particular segment in different ways. Like, off the top of my head, the schoolyard bully from Operation Zoo ended up appearing as the bouncer for Lime Ricky's bar in this segment. So he's portrayed in a much more friendly light compared to the schoolyard bully from Operation Zoo. So you could say that this is an example of them reusing background characters in a different way, because Yeah, it's the same design from Operation Zoo, but the character acts much differently than the character that originally used the character design in Season 1. And this won't be the only time that happens. There's another example I'm thinking of off the top of my head, but we'll eventually talk about that particular entry and that particular character design when we eventually get to the recap and thoughts video for the entry that I'm thinking of. So otherwise, that's about the general thoughts of mine for this particular segment. We got ourselves a number 2 spotlight appearance, and we get introduced to a villain who could be considered one of number 2's arch enemies. So yeah, that's about it for now. So as of this video, we've now discussed the B segment of episode 14 of Codename Kids Next Door on this channel. Take care, and until next time.